All right, Mets fans, let's talk two names that are elite and could find themselves on the trade block for the Mets to go after. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. Appreciate you all being on this channel, whether you are a returning subscriber or whether you are here for the first time. Please do hit those thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and drop those thoughts and opinions because we are, spoiler alert, talking about the bullpen yet again with these two potential names that could find themselves on the trade block within their respective teams. There are a lot of similarities between these two names, but there are a couple of differences, one being the overall situational fit with a potential trade to the New York Mets. But the one similarity that it's going to give, away to you all in terms of who these names are is that both of these guys are currently in the NL Central. Yes, that's right. We are starting off this video with the name Ryan Helsley. So much to like about Ryan Helsley. I've been watching him over the years, have continued success and kind of improving as each year goes by. And that was very evident in his 2023 campaign versus his 2024 campaign, where he wasn't really available in 2023 as much as he was in 2024. And given the increase of innings, there was a lot to like in terms of the inverse relationship that he had with some of his metrics. The strikeouts, obviously, per nine going down just a little bit, but at 10.7, you're still not going to complain. But also the walks going down by a pretty good margin between 2023 and 2024, and also the ERA also going down. Those two values, as you have more innings, as you are out on the field more, usually have a positive, or I guess a negative correlation. But with Ryan Helsley, it was inverse. As the innings went up, those production values went down, and you like to see those numbers going down in terms of the walk rate and the ERA, and the walks and hits per innings pitched. The whip category remained pretty consistent. There's so much to like about Ryan Helsley, and you take a look at his arsenal. He's a 3-pitch guy in the back end of your bullpen. He had 49 saves in his all-star campaign for the Cardinals last season. Those types of guys are really hard to come by in today's MLB. And obviously, the New York Mets don't need a closer, and this would be more so of a setup guy to Edwin Diaz, which we'll get into the situational fit here in just a second, and how that could not be a fit with what the Mets have going on right now. But there was also a pretty distinct and important difference in his 2023 campaign versus his 2024 campaign in terms of his pitch distribution and usage. In 2023, he was predominantly throwing his four-seam fastball over his slider by a pretty large clip, but he had more success at a higher rate with the slider. I'm not sure whether this was an adjustment on his own or whether it was via the Cardinals coaching staff, but he evened out that distribution, and he actually made the slider his primary pitch in 2024. You see at 48.3% compared to his four-seamer at 45.4%. When you have that type of movement on your slider and you're able to utilize that and set up and change the hitter's eye level with the 100+ mile per hour fastball that Ryan Helsley has in his back pocket, that is always a recipe for success. And then you can throw in the curveball at around 6.2% just to keep the hitters honest. Now, again, this doesn't make quite as much situational sense for the Mets as the next name that we will go over, because although Ryan Helsley is only scheduled to make $8.1 million according to Spotrac in their valuation next season, this guy is coming off of a 49 save season, right? The Cardinals are a team that are slowly entering rebuild mode, especially with some of the older names that they have. Paul Goldschmidt is entering free agency. Nolan Arenado is potentially on the trade block, as we've heard his name potentially linked to the New York Mets this offseason. They're in flux, and they're going to want heavy prospect capital going back. We're talking about a trade that potentially mimics the Josh Hader trade a couple of seasons ago that was actually made by David Stearns. So I'm talking 2 top 10 prospects at a minimum, potentially even 3. Do we really think David Stearns given what he did with Josh Hader at the time in the Brewers organization, is going to do the inverse in terms of bringing this guy on to be a setup guy. No, but we can always dream. And that's really why I included him in this video, because I know we will be talking about this name in our Mets Hot Stove Live later tonight. I'll also link that in the description down below in case you want to stop by in the live chat and discuss some of what we're talking about here with myself and Rob. But again, we have to do our due diligence in terms of at least understanding what it could take and where the fit might lie. And again, Edwin Diaz in the 9th, Ryan Helsley in the 8th. You add that on to a guy like Ryan Stanek if the Mets bring him back, and 2 names in the front end like Reed Garrett and Jose Butto, and you are cooking. But again, very unlikely. What's more likely is David Stearns reuniting with this other NL Central player that he is very familiar with. And yes, you guessed it. I'm talking about Devin Williams of the Milwaukee Brewers, who, unlike Ryan Helsley, having that success from 2023 to 2024, Devin Williams actually took a bit of a step back in 2024, and that was in large part due to the unfortunate circumstance that he began the 2024 campaign with, and having stress fractures in his back that he had to deal with, which caused him to miss the first 4 months of the season, and therefore he only posted 21 2/3 innings pitched across the entire season for the Brewers. But you take a look at 2023 and even 2022, where he was an all-star in both of those seasons, elite numbers. And again, another closer, but makes more situational sense to go ahead and slot into a setup type of role alongside Edwin Diaz than a guy like Ryan Helsley. And the same sort of scenario applies here in terms of what he's going to be making. He's also going to get a nice payday, just as Ryan Helsley is after the 2025 season, because again, they're both 29 years old and they're both going to be unrestricted free agents after the next season. And Devin Williams is an established vet. He's had so many successful seasons, and this is why I feel comfortable, even given the walk rate that he's had, even given some of maybe now the injury concerns that he's had with that back. I feel very comfortable if David Stearns decides to go this route and bring him on to be that setup guy. I'm all for it. We all know what he possesses in his pitch arsenal, his pitch distribution, heavy changeup, or at least that was the case in 2023 when he had all that success in over 58 innings pitched. Posted a 1.53 ERA in that season. And again, he kind of struggled in 2024 in terms of gaining his footing, but you look at the overall numbers in those 21 2/3 innings pitched in the regular season, 1.25 ERA, 15.8 in the strikeouts per 9 category, and also a whip that was under 1.00. Those are some pretty damn good numbers, if I must say so myself, for Devin Williams. But where everybody wants to sort of, I guess, point toward is the ultimate failure, I guess you could say, that he had in the wild card series against the New York Mets, and Pete Alonso giving up that go-ahead bomb in the 9th inning of Game 3 of the wild card series. There were some discussions about Williams potentially tipping his pitches. Whether that's an issue or not, I have no doubt in my mind that if the Mets make the move for Williams, their coaching staff, being the ones that pointed out said tipping of pitches, if there really is any validity to that, will get him right and they'll get him back on track. So again, this makes the most situational sense to me in terms of the trade value. And the Savant page just jumps out at you. Now, this is the Savant page from 2023. And I wanted to be as fair as possible to Devin Williams because the Savant page obviously looks different with the lack of innings that he had in 2024. But you take a look at this all-star season and the Savant numbers and the percentiles. It's like up and down the board, 98th percentile, 99th percentile, 99, 99, 99. And again, the one blue bar that you see there is the walks, because that has continuously been an issue for Devin Williams in his career, especially over the last 3 seasons. And that's something that Mets fans and this Mets organization has to be cognizant of, because 2024, what was the one problem the Mets had? Was walks, whether it was starting pitchers or relievers. But again, when you have a guy of this caliber, when you have a potential guy on the market of this caliber that has the ability to be a setup guy and a closer should you need it, this is the guy to get. Oh, and by the way, David Stearns knows him extremely well when he was in Milwaukee Brewer in that organization being the GM. Again, this makes so much sense. But as I was saying, as I kind of lost train of thought here because I'm so excited about potentially trading for a guy like Devin Williams to bring him on board for 2025, something changed in his usage in 2024 in comparison to 2023, where his four-seam fastball actually took priority over the changeup. Now, why that is, I have no idea. I'm not sure if he gave an interview after the season to try to explain that, but that's something that has to revert back to the 2023 and 2022 days, especially with how nasty it is getting all that swing and miss to contribute to the strikeout percentage, the whiff percentage, and the chase percentage that you see on the Savant page. He needs to get back to establishing the dominance of that changeup. And again, basically a two-pitch pitcher. He threw his cutter for about 1.5% of the time last season. It's not really a realistic factor. It's not a realistic factor, and it's not a game changer for Devin Williams. He's a two-pitch pitcher, just as Edwin Diaz is, respectively, with his fastball and slider. Same thing applies here for Devin Williams with his four-seam fastball and his changeup. Now, like Ryan Helsley, on the expiring deal, as I've already mentioned, valued at around $8.4 million. And Jeff Passan himself already released an article/report on the Brewers declining Devin Williams' $10.5 million club option. And that's never good news if you're a player in terms of the relationship that you have with your organization. Same thing could be said about Willy Adames entering free agency. We know that the Brewers, and David Stearns knows this all too well, they don't like to pay their premier players, which is what Adames is and which is what Devin Williams is. They don't like to pay these guys big contract extensions. They'd rather reach into the farm system and try to replicate that production, which they've had decent success at doing so in the regular season, but there's probably a reason why they always falter in the playoffs, just as they did this past season and the season before that, and on and on and on and on. So this makes the most sense to me. It's not going to take as much prospect capital as Ryan Helsley, obviously, given the injuries, given the lack of sample size in 2024, but also it's important to realize and note the differences in situations that both of these teams are in, the Cardinals versus the Brewers. The Brewers are a lot more win now, let's put the best possible team out there now than the Cardinals are. And therefore, you could potentially utilize that in your favor if you're David Stearns by giving them already MLB talent. Now, again, we've mentioned these two potential candidates being trade candidates for the Mets going elsewhere, Jeff McNeil and Starling Marte. I don't pay too much attention in terms of Brewers baseball and the personnel that they have around the diamond, but their outfield, I know they have one name, and it's not Jackson Chourio, who's going to be a staple, very talented young player for them for the foreseeable future. It's Christian Yelich, who has had perpetual back problems, and presumably they look for some insurance for Christian Yelich. Is this a scenario where the Mets could pawn off a guy like Starling Marte or Jeff McNeil to be a corner outfielder for them? I don't know. Time will tell, but that's potentially a route that the Mets could look at as an advantage to get a guy like Devin Williams in the door in comparison to doing business with the Cardinals for Ryan Helsley, which will take an arm and a leg to acquire his services. So let me know in the comment section down below, obviously, who you would like to have, one, taking the situational differences aside, but also who makes more realistic sense to you, given the Mets situation and also the Cardinals and the Brewers situation. Let me know. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Again, we'll probably be talking about this in a Hot Stove Live. Check out all the latest content on the channel. We'll be going live around 7 p.m. tonight. Check it out. Peace out, Mets fans. It's your boy CP. And also, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. All right, see you later.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.